And thus, over the weekend, over the last few days, we've gotten some debuts. We've got players that have got their first games under the belt. We got some that played 2 or 3 games with their new spots. And so we want to take the first bit of the pod to talk about some of the big debuts and early returns from players that we've seen so far. And I think it is fitting to start with some of the stars that were moved. Most notably, I feel like we've talked a good bit about Cleveland over the past couple of pods. We've now gotten to see James Harden in a Cleveland Cavaliers uniform, Steve. 2 games so far as a recording with James Harden as a Cav. 23 points, 8 assists, and a steal against the Sacramento Kings. 22 points, 10 rebounds, 7 assists, and 3 blocks against the Denver Nuggets there. It has been fun watching James Harden kind of find himself within this Cleveland offense to kind of kick things off. It's very much, okay, this is still Donovan Mitchell's. I'm cool operating off the ball. I'll run these pick and rolls if you need me to. And then Donovan Mitchell goes to the bench and it just becomes the Harden show. And I think that has been a fascinating development, probably isn't the right word. It's been fascinating to kind of watch the switch flip for him, depending on what lineups he's in. But I think some of the early returns for me, it has just been his comfort in pick and roll. Like, I've enjoyed what him and Jared Allen have already looked like so far in their 2 games together.
You seem surprised by this. I feel like we talked about the appeal of James Harden for the Cleveland Cavaliers and his ability to play and pick and roll and what that would mean for them. And I think what you've seen is him being able to unlock Jared Allen. And I think he has a stronger chemistry with Jared Allen because of his pace when he comes off screens. When he's able to kind of get downhill, he's not as fast as Darius Garland. So if you go to high pick and roll, Jared Allen can kind of get into that pocket. And now James Harden takes a couple dribbles, you reopen the pocket pass. And now, to your point with Cleveland's offense, with how they're able to kind of have the wheel setting, their spacing, their cutting, it opens up cuts if the weak side is in. And so, especially against Sacramento, you saw Sacramento try and cycle and to get to different things defensively. They couldn't quite hit the right buttons. And so that just adds a layer to Cleveland's attack. And so this is where you get the benefit of, we have Donovan Mitchell, we have our pace, we have our tempo. We now have James Harden, who's going to engage the defense at some point. Even if we get him into a dribble handoff and the big is back and it's a drop, he's going to get attention at some point. He's going to hold the weak side, and that's going to open things up. So I think that's been the biggest thing. It's like, it's kind of what I was trying to preach. It's like, James Harden is a playmaker. It's a lot easier as a coach, no offense to Darius Garland, to game plan on how I'm going to guard him. It's going to be drop, right? Until you make enough plays or make enough shots to change what we want to do. With James Harden, you're going to think and you're going to engage, and it's going to open things up.
I think to bounce off of your last point, Steve, between Harden and Garland, we talked a little bit about this last week, so I won't hang here too long. But there is just like a baked-in level of aggression that James Harden has that kind of dictates defensive coverages in a way that Garland, to your point, kind of has to get there. You need to see 3 pull-ups go down before it's like, okay, cool. With James Harden, he steps on the court. It's like, ooh, do we want to play drop? Because he can just kind of get downhill and get into some of the foul drawing. He can get into the pocket passing. If he strings the big along long enough, that might open up lobs. If we switch against him, as we saw with his very first basket as a Cleveland Cavalier, you get the pick and roll on the left side of the floor. Dylan Cartwell switches. They start down nice. You get the switch. James Harden's like, all right, cool. Rook, you're having yourself a quality campaign. I don't really care. I'm stepping back. I'm knocking this down. You don't always have that level of aggression baked in with Darius Garland. I think the skill is certainly there, but that aggression isn't. And so it's been kind of fun to watch when he taps into that. And I think, bouncing off of everything else that you said there, what stood out to me, you mentioned the pacing in pick and roll with James Harden. And watching him and Jared Allen already develop this level of chemistry, not a surprise to your earlier point, but it has been fun watching that play out. And I think something that we talked about in our trends episode not too long ago is pick and rolls being ran higher up the floor. James Harden is one of the ball handlers around the top 3 in terms of how high his pick and rolls are ran on average. And now having that with Jared Allen, who is really good at flipping the angle of a pick, making sure he gets contact. I can slow play the roll if I need to. James Harden, to your point, has a cadence that allows Jared Allen to get right back into that pocket, and he can jet out of there when he wants to as well. He is still a mobile big at the end of the day. It's easy to see how that combination works and the way that Cleveland is able to kind of play out of that. Even to the Kings debut, Steve, 23 pick and rolls ran by James Harden against Sacramento, 1.3 points per possession ran. Points per possession generated on those trips for Cleveland. It was an insane effort. Wasn't the same efficiency in the Denver game, but even if you look at the quality of those looks and watching how the pick and roll plan kind of shifted in Denver, we're going to run these even higher. We're going to sprinkle in some Spain or stat pick and roll to see if we can get some guards back screening Nikola Jokic. You saw a little bit more aggression from James Harden, looking for the floater a little bit more, looking to get downhill a little bit more. And so the shots didn't fall, but the process felt good. And that, again, makes me feel even better about what this is ultimately going to be. A question I would toss to you, Steve. How much has the lineup combinations since Harden's been there? How much has that popped for you? It's felt like a lot of like 3-guard stuff with Donovan Mitchell. You haven't really seen a ton of that in the Harden lineups as of yet. Like, I'm curious, like, has anything on the lineup front popped for you so far?
Well, I mean, I think there's a couple different ways they can go about it if you're Cleveland. One, Kenny Atkinson loves the 3-guard lineup. Two, I think the bigger thing is like being able to have James Harden anchor some of these second unit lineups and play with different players. And how much is he going to play with Dennis Schroeder? We'll see how that develops. But I also like, in especially the Sacramento game, hey, we can kind of just go 4-guard lineups. Against Denver, we can kind of go 4-guard lineups technically, depending on how you feel about Jalen Tyson to a degree. But we can kind of have Harden, Tyson, Merrill, Schroeder, Jared Allen out there. And I think it gives them a little bit of versatility because we have the spacing. All these guys know what we want to do. We are able to drive the ball, and we can keep pressure on you. And so I think the big thing with James Harden, if you watched over the first couple games, it's not just so much playing with, the bigs. Watch the random screens from the guards. It's been a part of what Cleveland does anyways. But now, okay, Jalen Tyson especially is able to kind of screen for James Harden, understand team switching, rescreen, and get a roll that way. Jalen Tyson's really good at screening and opening things up. But Craig Porter Jr. being able to mix in a screen, randomly after you defend an action, and you're able to get a slip that way. So I think it's that kind of interplay, which is good. Now it gets interesting because how much are teams just going to want to live with switching against Cleveland? How much is that going to be the recipe they live with, just to, hey, we need to stay out of rotation? Can they use their guards to kind of poke at that? Can they find a different way to get defenses away from that? Is probably where my mind goes. But I think the versatility, quote unquote, James Harden at the 4, whatever Kenny Atkinson is messing with, helps them, I think, especially, because they don't have both of their bigs right now. But I think the more lineup versatility they have, the better off they'll be.
Okay, I like it. Last couple things from me on the Harden front. To your point, Steve, keeping an eye on what the switching volume looks like against Cleveland, against Harden in particular. Team switched about 26% of his pick and rolls in the Sacramento game. That was down to about 17% against Denver. But again, that is a huge part of their diet anyway. And so we'll keep track of that. And then the question I'll toss to you is kind of alluded to the beauty of having Harden and Donovan Mitchell together. How have you felt about their usage together so far? It hasn't felt like a ton of Donovan screening for Harden, Harden screening for Donovan yet. Would you like to see that perk up, or are you just kind of in wait and see mode with those two being used together?
I mean, I think it's wait and see mode because you don't just automatically use them together. I think the best action they've done is being able to run Donovan Mitchell setting a pin down for James Harden into James Harden getting a dribble handoff. And now, okay, if James Harden gets downhill and you help on that roll, it's a skip to Donovan Mitchell. I think it's more important for them to be a wave more than particularly be in action together because it depends on who's guarding who. Ideally, you're going to have your top 2 defenders on those two.
On those two.
In the best case scenarios. So you're going to end up with a switch in pure actions. Now, you could manipulate it, try and get a switch, and then get them in action together, but I don't know if that's as valuable as taking Denver and saying, hey, Jamal Murray, would you like to switch against James Harden? Okay, if we're putting Sam Merrill one pass away, you're going to switch and double. Now that opens things up for you. And so I think that's kind of the advantage of basketball that James Harden can bring to the table that maybe didn't get as much consideration at the start, where, okay, how many people do you want to guard James Harden? If we get a switch that you don't like with our spacing principles, is that just opening up a play for us? Like, I think when you watch in the first 2 games, how many times have you seen James not really have to dribble a ton to be able to create a look for someone else? And I think that helps Cleveland in the half court. So I think that's where it's less, it needs to be Donovan and James together, or just has to be, use them as pressure points. And like for me, I was more happy that Donovan Mitchell drove a lot in that first Sacramento game more than anything else.
Boy, did he. Particularly that fourth quarter. Like, he turned on his head. James Harden knocks down some big threes in that fourth quarter as well. It's fun watching those two flow in that manner. So just wanted to ask your opinion on that, see how you felt about it. Last thing I'll mention, I think it's 119 offensive rating so far in the Harden minutes. It's a 124 defensive rating in the Harden minutes so far per PvP stats. Don't think that is all his fault, the latter number, but I am keeping an eye on what the effort is going to look like there. I do think he's going to be a big part of their switching in particular, but he's got to hold up. So I'll just note that very quickly.
What have you thought about the defense from James Harden so far?
It hasn't been great, but I mean, I never expected great. So I think for me, it's funny in the first half of that Kings game in particular, there were some off-ball things where it was like, hey, you don't really want these to perk up in your first game here, but it's also your first game here. But then you get some of the possessions where you have someone's kind of sitting up at the top of the key and James Harden's providing nail help and he's very active. It's like, okay, see, this is more of what you want. Like, I'm not expecting all defense caliber stuff, but just kind of do your job, do your work early and get out of there. Because in theory, you're going to have Jared Allen behind you. And once Evan Mobley gets healthy, you're going to have both of those guys behind you or just involved in some kind of way. So I don't think you're going to need like the A+ James Harden defensive effort for what you need. Just do your job type beat. And so like there were some things that popped for me in that Kings game in particular, a little bit in the Denver game. But again, that's why I'm not waving the red flag like, oh, this is cooked. It's not going to work. It's just like, hey, let's make sure we're at a consistent level here.
I think if you go to the fourth quarter of that Denver game, the James Harden early rotations, he's just like, oh, I'm in. So whatever happens, happens. But I'm going to be here. So Jokic, that's fine. I'm meeting you. We'll do our job.